medical suppression seems to rise proportionate to the rise of medical enlightenment. And as viable treatment options within the integrative health sector continue to expand, you can bet that the heavy hands of suppression, the heavy hands of disinformation, they're going to strangle any dissenting voice. How do they do that? They usually do it through employing a variety of techniques used in what we call dissident suppression. So in 2013, a group funded at the highest levels of the medical industrial complex began a well-orchestrated attack against alternative health at large, but they had an emphasis on several key players within that sector. And at the time, we didn't know who it was. We didn't know why they were doing what they were doing. But in 2016, we retained the services of a counterintelligence security firm, and they've uncovered an elaborate disinformation, I guess you'd call it a conspiracy, against non-conventional treatment alternatives in general, and a specific dissident suppression campaign against the BX protocol, against several of its affiliates, as well as some individuals and organizations within the anti-vax movement. The suppression campaign is funded, and this is where it gets interesting, by two of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. We now have in our possession the evidentiary support needed to perfect our claims. Interestingly enough, these are the same companies that have been given the sole monopoly for the manufacture and the sale of drugs. I'm speaking of the international drug cartel, the so-called big pharma establishment. So why the BX protocol? Well, keep in mind, we're just one of several, but we may be the lone wolf with regard to the following. Number one, we're developing and manufacturing our own highly scientific technologies. We're doing it outside of the mainstream. Number two, we're starting our own university to train our doctors, and we currently have doctor affiliates in 18 of the 24 countries that we operate in. Number three, we're building a medical city in the Caribbean. Number four, our technologies actually work. And in number five, we refuse to pursue drug classification, peer review, or adhere to the unethical double-blind standard. So you don't have to look far to see why we're on the list. Again, we know who the people are. We know the organizations involved. We have documentation supporting this knowledge through our sources. We can tell you that the efforts involve attacks against many people within the integrative health field. We're not the only ones. And we're talking about attacks that are tactical and strategic in nature, okay? And when I say that we can prove that the attacks happened, that they were precipitated by two large pharmaceutical companies, we have the email records, okay? The flow of cash supporting the campaign. We know which senators were involved. We know the specific universities involved. And the New York-based media firm that functions as that sort of kingpin in the operation. We have the social media trails, we have the computer files, the whole 9 yards. Now, am I going to name names? No, it's not in our strategic interest to do so at this time, but our enemies can be assured that we have the names, we have the documentation, and I'm talking all the way down to the emails, bank records, and VPN server sites in Luxembourg. And we're presently holding that in trust with our attorneys in multiple law firms as a measure of security. There have been death threats involved in this little campaign of theirs, and I will not be intimidated. I'm sure that they know that we know, and I think this is probably the only thing that's kept us alive, kept me alive, while my colleagues seem to be dropping like flies. Our strategy ensures survival in perpetuity, because they can go ahead and kill me and go ahead and activate our countermeasures and see our cause increase, not decline. So this suppression of dissent campaign actually began with the anti-vaccination movement. It's kind of spread out from there. The media firm, this New York-based media firm, they own or at least contract with a vast network of forums, websites. You've got blogs, physician and university groups that represent a formidable network of media resources. These are the primary venues that they're using to spread the propaganda. I'm not going to bore you with the unnecessary details. A legal response in a point-by-point rebuttal is available upon our website. Certified legal reviews from our U.S.-based law firm are also available upon request. But there are some things that you need to know. There are some things that you need to be aware of. The organization has supported cyber attacks against the BX protocol, against its researchers, founders, staff, affiliates, members, and associates. This is primarily an internet-based operation, but there actually are ground assets as well. I'm not going to get into those details too much here. But having a background in intelligence myself, I can give you an idea of the sophistication that we're talking about here. I mean, these guys are using agency-grade cryptographic technologies. And anytime you see somebody using fully integrated end-to-end security systems, 256-bit SSL encryption or something like a PGP encryption system with multiple VPN networks, you know you're dealing with somebody that's keen on hiding the data that they're passing through the internet. And there are different levels of encryption, obviously, and you can usually tell who you're dealing with by the level of encryption that they're employing. Is it point-to-point tunneling, something like a 2-layer tunneling, or is it something like our guys are using, which is a fully, multi-port, military-grade open VPN system, which I'm sure is meaningless to most of you, but for those of you who are security geeks out there, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about here. So this is when you know that you're dealing with somebody that with some serious cash behind their operation. So what is the overall game plan? Well, let's take a look at some of the tactics, and this is right off of our website. Number one, deleting, modifying, misquoting, and fabricating information about the BX protocol, its founders, researchers, staff, affiliates, members, and associates. That's right off the website. And when I say fabrication, I mean fabrication. As just one of hundreds of examples, supposedly, according to these guys, I'm wanted by the FBI. But problem is that the mugshots that they're deriving from the internet are based on misdemeanor trespassing charges on a target practice gun range where I took my children to a gun range, didn't know that it had been closed down. We'd used it for 20 years and received a misdemeanor trespassing ticket. Or a USDA protest misdemeanor where we were protesting contaminated beef and poultry, and again, a misdemeanor. But they'll harvest the mugshots, the photos, which is required under plea and abeyance in the state of Utah. There's no arrest record involved here. These are simply ticketed violations, and they'll doctor that photo in an FBI frame with standard FBI format, and they'll plaster that on seemingly legitimate sites. Okay, that's just as one example, but there are literally hundreds of similar allegations. Number two, obstructing research with 3 separate universities. So imagine somebody actually possessing enough political influence to force or somehow convince a university to stop the research project. Keep in mind that we're paying for the research. They're not doing this out of the kindness of their hearts. This is a contracted fee-for-service scenario. Now, call me a conspiracy theorist, but when you see the outcomes of some of the research that survived, you may begin to see, knowing the history of suppression with similar breakthroughs, why they have such an interest in stopping it. Number 3, propagation of false rumors. This is a standard protocol in dissident suppression. You can research that on your own. I won't go into that too much. But number 4, posing as patients in forums, blogs, social media, or other internet venues. This is one of the reasons why we've really never relied on an internet information strategy. Our affiliates are hand-picked, we train them, we empower them with truth, and our philosophy is the truth will set you free so that you can discern the falsehoods. But strategically, we have to have a chance to tell the truth before some believing soul, or maybe they're a skeptic soul, finds the false information and embraces it as the truth. Let's just say that we have a proactive strategy in this regard. Number 5, filing formal complaints with government agencies. Making frivolous complaints is one of the key factors that they use. We state that on the site. Of course, the agencies might try to come after us if we were jurisdictional low-hanging fruit, which we're not. And I don't want to badmouth government entirely. There's some very good people in government, people that want to do the right thing, and we've actually had support from many of those type of people in the agencies, mostly because we're fully compliant in any jurisdiction that we're in. The real slime is on the black ops side of private interest. That's where the real garbage is. Number 6, moving on here. Identifying any persons associated with the BX on the internet and engaging with them. That's number 6. This is where you come into the picture. It's our conclusion that this group that is attacking alternative health, attacking those outspoken opponents that challenge the official narrative, they're collecting and analyzing metadata on anyone digitally connected to that opponent. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we just lost about 50% of the people on the webcast, but it's important to understand, listen, this is not based on broad assumptions. This is based on specific experience with this group hacking and tapping. They'll set up a user profile on you, okay, based on your particular orientation to alternative health. The vast majority of people, they probably don't care about, but if you're an affiliate of ours, if you're a doctor affiliate and you're not using encrypted email and taking some basic precautions, then you can expect to get your email hacked, and you can expect to have everyone in your email list receive disparaging information about the BX. Just make sure that you avoid downloading any unknown applications, avoid engaging with trolls or bashers in forums. They will hack the forum. They'll just pull your IP address directly out of the admin side of the forum. I mean, you should at least use something like TopGuard or some other anonymous email service along with a VPN connection to the internet. TopGuard actually has both VPN and email services. And it's not hard to set up, but I recommend that if you're going to communicate with us, then at least employ some basic strategies. Our affiliates on our system are provided with encrypted back office email communications, the same with our patients. So our system has become quite secure, and we recommend that you use that system for security. I don't expect you to have biometric access and encrypted keyboards like I do, but it wouldn't hurt for a couple $100, right? I mean, in general, it wouldn't hurt, just if you're dealing with keyloggers with identity theft. And I understand that telling you all of this is really not helping our business model, but it's our responsibility to disclose to you the facts. You're probably not going to want to be involved with our organization unless you're a maverick, and that's fine. We like mavericks. We prefer mavericks. So with that disclosure, if you haven't left the webcast, then you probably are a maverick. You probably are a truth seeker, somebody that walks in the light and not in the darkness. And if that's the case, then let's explore in kind of a conclusion why the perpetrators, why do they feel justified in these actions? And why has alternative health or alternative health philosophies been chosen for elimination? In short, you could say money, but you could say money and power. Think about it. According to the World Health Organization, something like 80% of the world's population relies on some form of natural treatment, natural therapies, alternative therapies, and that's bad for business. So the attack on non-conventional medicine is designed, number one, to protect the power base, number two, to protect the money, because we're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar pharmaceutical industry, and that's a significant power base, no doubt about it. But there's a darker side to the equation. As we discovered the specific individuals and organizations involved in the attacks, and remember, we spent big bucks here to hire the top cybersecurity firm in the world to figure out who these guys were, and it was interesting to detect a common thread that seemed to kind of unify these guys. A sort of philosophical orientation, if you will. I like to call the cyber thug perpetrators the naturalistic extremist. I call the philosophy naturalistic extremism, which is now the dominant force behind the suppression of medical enlightenment. Let me repeat that because it's worth repeating. Naturalistic extremism is the dominant force behind the suppression of medical enlightenment. If we look at holistic, natural, or any of the non-conventional health philosophies out there, regardless of whether they're founded in good science or not, and we contrast that sort of do no harm philosophy with the mindset of the naturalistic, conventional, allopathic paradigm, we begin to see a great divide. It's quite obvious, a divide that dramatically separates the two ways of thinking. On the one hand, we have people like you who likely espouse a philosophy that says, Let's take every good thing that we can find in the conventional realm. Let's combine that with scientifically and empirically demonstrated healing strategies. In fact, let's capitalize on every form of healing that considers the whole person, mind, body, spirit, emotions, whatever your particular philosophy of healing might be. And let's merge these holistic forces in a true quest for optimal health and wellness. Not to put words in your mouth, but that's generally the type of health philosophy that you're going to see emerging out of the non-conventional, holistic, natural, integrative realm. On the other hand, you have those that believe that every force operating in the universe is natural, rejecting anything that is outside the purview of peer review and double blind, regardless of whether the treatment philosophy is scientifically objective or not. Their philosophy stands in total opposition to any alternate reality, pretending that their philosophy is somehow scientifically and intellectually superior because they say so. The one declaring live and let live and the other divide and conquer, right? You look at alternative free-thinking philosophies on the one hand and naturalistic extremism on the other, and what you end up with are divergent philosophical orientations, paradigmatic orientations that are increasingly polarizing. That's the trend. And it's accelerating like a bat out of hell. And naturalistic extremism is a philosophy that currently advocates for the suppression, not only the suppression, but the eventual destruction of any viewpoint that happens to disagree with its notions, its faulty notions, I might add. In fact, it's a commonly held belief among the hardcore naturalists that naturalistic science is the new dominant religion of our society, or at least it should be. You know, these guys, we're talking about a religion imposed on the world in the name of science. Now that puts kind of an interesting twist on things, doesn't it? And if you don't think that naturalists are creedal about scientism, think again. In fact, they'll tell you that science alone, and of course by science I'm speaking of their particular brand of science, their particular brand of dogmatic religiosity, in fact, is the only reliable road to understanding anything that there is to be understood. Now keep in mind that my argument isn't against the fact that they claim that all truth is scientific truth, which alone is absurd, but rather that they package lies and distortion as truth, while attacking truth and calling it a lie. And the new hardcore naturalistic extremists, they'll advocate for the suppression of non-conventional therapies, whether they're scientific or not, on the justifiable basis that non-conventional health philosophies are dangerous for the world, and that the people advocating them are dangerous, and that they should be dealt with accordingly. This is serious business. This is not a game. But I can assure you that we are a strong organization. We have countermeasures in place that will dissuade the opposition. They've recently learned of those countermeasures, and I believe that we have an accord. But the problem, it's only going to get worse. The general global pandemic of naturalism will only proliferate from here. I'm sure you know about the killing of holistic doctors around the globe over the past year or so. The German cartel poisoning entire groups of people at holistic conferences in Germany. The raids, the attacks, the staged suicides, etc. Disease is big business. Treating the symptoms in perpetuity, big business. And alternative health and free thinking in general is bad for big business. The war against alternative and natural medicine, I mean, it's been going on for a long time. It's been probably the last 100 years or so. Started with the Rockefellers, started with the IG Farben group, spreading out to more than 320 pharmaceutical companies, and then consolidating back to just 11 in the past decade. But we're entering a new phase of suppression here, where conventional doctors, medical researchers, and scientists have joined forces with universities, with other naturalistic extremists like Google and Facebook, all in tandem with big government and big pharma to destroy medical freedom among the majority in the name of naturalism, claiming, and I quote from the infamous Quack Watch, that the methods of alternative medicine not only lack scientific proof of safety and or effectiveness, they also lack a plausible rationale. Think about it. Coming from the drug doctors, whose precious pharmaceuticals, according to the Journal of the American Medical Association, account for the 5th leading cause of death in the United States. Drugs that they call safe and effective. This coming from the same people who literally worship the World Health Organization, whose own estimates show that 1 in 10 hospital admissions leads to an adverse event, while 1 in 300 admissions leads to death. The same group whose medical errors are among the top 10 killers in the world, according to the United States Institute of Medicine. Preventable medical errors kill 98,000 people in the United States alone each year, but natural medicine is the enemy. Makes a lot of sense. Nothing more disgusting than a hypocrite. And to some extent, you're not seeing that in the United States as much as you are in the UK, Australia, Canada, Sweden, Germany. In many of these places, they've actually passed legislation making it impossible to even study natural medicine in the schools. I kid you not, they're shutting down university courses, etc., claiming that this type of education puts the public at risk. Are you kidding me? There should be a revolution in the streets. And in a manner of speaking, those integrative doctors listening to this webcast right now, you've been chosen for natural selection by the new religion of naturalism. Getting rid of you or suppressing your philosophy is a process fundamental to the survival of big pharma, fundamental to the coming power grab for your health. You already see it with the vaccines. Codex is merely a precursor here. This is far beyond money. We're talking about medical enslavement, which is just one of several transitional mechanisms that'll be used to achieve control, not only over your health, but over the global population at large. And that's the truth. Now, you might not be able to handle the truth, but that'll make very little difference in the final analysis. And these Luciferian narcissists, I guarantee you, they believe that they're stronger, richer, and more equipped to survive than you are. They mean to spread their seed. I'm talking about the seeds of their dogma into the entire species. And I can see why these bastards are turning up the heat. 2 new studies from the National Institute of Health show that 1/3 of Americans use alternative medicine. And you wonder why these guys are trying to regulate the internet? You think that they want a free-thinking society? Oh, no, no, no. Now, in my opinion, they're actually losing the war, and they know it. I mean, naturalistic extremism is a self-refuting and self-defeating worldview. Naturalistic extremism as a metaphysical philosophy is simply incompatible with true science, period. Those that attack us do so on the basis of their own metaphysical worldview, not a scientific one. Don't be fooled. They're not really fooling anyone. They're certainly not fooling the well-informed. So I guess what I'd leave with you is, as you navigate through the waters of the BX protocol, be careful. Be informed, do not fear, and know that the truth shall prevail. Thank you very much for listening.